Welcome to the EFFIT Hour. My name is Carla Carey. I'm your hostess, and today's F word is fatal. I chose the word fatal because we're talking about cops and Cop City and things that happen around that, and I just wanted to share that word because I thought it was appropriate. This afternoon on the show, we have Emily Cole, who is the Executive Director of OFU PAC. Welcome, Emily.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm just going to jump right in. So I know you're very busy. You're a wife, a mom, you're running for city council in Hilliard, and then you're the executive director of OFU PAC. What does that look like to you?
My days are never quiet, and they are sun up to sundown and then some. But working for and with OFU PAC is the greatest honor of my career.
Exactly what is OFU PAC and what do you do?
Yeah, so OFU PAC stands for Ohio Families Unite for Political Action and Change. It's a long name, so we just keep it simple at OFU PAC. And it is the action fund of Ohio Families Unite Against Police Brutality. So what that means is we are like the political arm. It's a 501c4 if someone's super technical about it, but it means we can do unlimited lobbying at the state house and at a federal level, and it means we can do some election work as well.
Nice. Okay. So I'll just put this little caveat in there that I am a board member of Ohio Families United Against Police Brutality. So it's not like I don't know, but I want the audience to know exactly who we are, what we do. So back in February, I was on a Zoom call, and in that Zoom call, we were talking about this Cop City. And I had never heard about it before, but they were trying to do it in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And I thought, a militarized training area, like all the acreage that they have, it was going to cost $90 million to fund. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted us to do a campaign letter writing. And at that point, I was like, okay, because we found out that the main company was housed in Dayton. So my fear was, if it's going to Atlanta by way of Ohio, by God, it's got to be coming to Ohio, mm-hmm. and I don't want to see that. And then all of a sudden I hear, oh, they're trying to do a Cop City in Ohio. So what were your thoughts? How did you get involved? How did you even hear about Cop City?
Yeah, great question. And to be transparent with you, it was snuck into the governor's budget. Not by Governor DeWine. So the budget process is a little complicated, but to make it real simple, the governor presents his budget. The House amends it with their own changes, and then once they pass it, it goes over to the Ohio Senate. They do the same process, and then if it's different, which it was in this case, then they come together, they hash out their compromise budget in a conference committee, passes, goes to the governor. So what happened was we were following it from when the governor introduced it, there was nothing there. It went through the House, nothing there. Went through the Senate, and then all of a sudden there's this amendment to commission a study for a joint law enforcement training center. And no one would fess up to who put it in there. No one wanted to take credit. No one wanted to advocate for it. They just tried to slide it in mm-hmm. without a line item. So it's just a policy. Okay. And they did that to another policy we were following, which would have lowered the minimum age to be a cop in Ohio to 18. Mm-hmm. So the Senate just slid these two in. And when I read all the conference reports. Okay. So I was reading the conference report and I was like, that sounds like Cop City to me. Mm-hmm. So I sent it around to some of the advocates and lobbyists I know at the State House, and they said, that looks like a Cop City to me too. And we were like, oh,
shit.
Like,
yeah.
Okay. And when it's already at that stage in the budget, you know, you're near the end. Mm-hmm. Like, all we had left was conference committee, and then it goes to the governor. So we had a really tight runway to do something about it.
So we're on this Zoom call, and when I heard about it, I'm like, I knew that was going to happen in Ohio. I knew it was just a matter of time. And so I'm so glad that we move forward, but I know how we move forward, but the audience doesn't know how we move forward. Tell everybody exactly like what we did and the outcome.
Yeah, so we had 2 weeks pretty much until the deadline for the governor to sign the budget. So based on state law, our current budget in Ohio expires at June 30th. New budget has to go into effect July 1st. And we didn't see the Senate budget until mid-June. And so what happened was we run a policy table. And so we get together with impacted families, activists, we say grassroots and grass tops organizations, so there are large folks at the table that are statewide, and there are small crews that are maybe 3 or 4 really engaged volunteers. And we started running that space in February of this year, and so we called an emergency meeting. And I walked through what was in the budget. Not all of it, because no one had time to read all that, but like we broke down, okay, they're calling it a training center, and training is such a sneaky word in the State House. And it's sneaky because for a lot of Democrats who only want to see the surface level of a policy, training sounds like they're giving us what we want. But when you actually uncover things like what's going on in Atlanta and the history behind some of these things, it becomes super clear that we're looking at militarized training of police. We are not looking at things like de-escalation and community-based policing and how do we treat mental health crises and identify those in the field. No, you wouldn't need a facility for that.
Exactly.
So,
what was the budget, or what were they proposing the budget to be for the Ohio Cop City?
So for the Ohio Cop City, they did not write a line item in yet, but what they did was if it had passed, it would have mandated, commissioned a study with recommendations, which means they're not studying should we do this, they're studying where do we build it. And so some of the estimates we heard were it could be anywhere up to $100 million for this center. So we had 2 weeks to do something about it, and we were optimistic, but we were also realistic that we don't own that space. And so we came together as a policy table led by the families, and I presented it to them. This is what's happening. This is our timeline. And what do you think we should do? And the first thing we did was leverage. We've worked hard to get in the State House, and it's open to anyone, but I mean, I can't tell you how many hours I've sat in hearings and speaking to legislators on our behalf and sending letters and doing testimony. And we've had, some of our impacted families come and testify at the State House. So throughout this General Assembly, which just started in January, we've started to develop a reputation. And so we used that and reached out to every person who we knew was probably going to be tapped for that conference committee. And our goal was to get in their ear before they started arguing that this had to go. And it could not be in the final version that they passed.
You know what I found real interesting was when we did meet on those Zooms, how I'm going to say naive some of those people were to exactly what Cop City meant to us versus what it sounded like to them. And I often wonder, how do they roll that out? Training, like that, like you said, it sounds like a really good buzzword to use. We're going to give them some more training, but the rest of the pieces, the intricate details weren't talked about until we brought it up to those people. And it just blew my mind that how they were so naive, well, it's training. And they're going to get more training.
I know, I won't call this person out, but in this, but I will say that if families are telling you their truth, believe them. And this person is a Democrat and was unwilling to believe them, to the point of arguing during the meeting about the lived experience. And frankly, the demands that these families deserved to make
Yeah.
of their elected officials for what should be funded in their budget and what should not.
It's sad to me how we deal with these families all across the United States. And when I made a phone call to Atlanta to say, hey, what are you guys doing about this cop city in Atlanta? A lot of those families didn't even hear about it. They knew nothing about it. So I'm going to share a couple of things that I found. One of the things was it was expected to cost $90 million in Atlanta. And this is the piece that got me. The center will include an auditorium for the fire and the police, a mock city burn unit for training, and urban police training. It doesn't say police training or police training in the rural areas. It says urban police training, which makes me feel like there's an extra target on black and brown people's backs.
Yes.
Right? And so it's like, how do the people not know what's going on?
Yeah.
Now, once it caught on down in Atlanta, oh, it was big chaos. They're burning stuff down and everything. And then I go and I do some more research and I find that Nationwide, who is not on our side, is the company that may be insuring them. However, if they lose the liability down there, there will be no cop city. So my suggestion would be to contact the powers to be at Nationwide.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other companies that are helping to fund this, but Nationwide is the main company. So if there's no Nationwide and no liability insurance, there's no cop city in Atlanta. But getting back to Ohio, so what was the outcome and how did we find out and how did we get to that outcome?
Yeah, so what happened was we had these meetings. Some lawmakers were more receptive than others. And so we came together as a group through our family table afterwards and kind of debriefed and talked about, all right, we've got 5 days. What do we want to do? And we threw out an idea. Let's do a rally. And let's invite every organization that we know to show up and we'll have matching t-shirts and we will have literature, which you and I have been passing out. You know, we passed out at a community Juneteenth event. I reached out to every single office in the legislature to invite them. Not thinking they would come, but then they know that there's something happening around this topic. And so we promoted it on social media and actually had a few posts that went viral. We had some amazing student activists who I made the call and they picked it up and ran with it. And so we came together in person. We planned a rally and we picked our date 2 days before and we went in person and we had over 30 people come on a Wednesday in the middle of their work day. To say no. And so we met on the steps, and my favorite part of that was when security had been beefed up because they were afraid. Because that tells me everything I need to know about how powerful we are in that space.
Absolutely.
And how strong our reputation is.
Yeah.
And so we came together. We held our rally. A lot of the families spoke really powerful truths tying in exactly what happened to their child or brother or loved one and how that would happen to a multitude of children were Cop City to be built. And then we went inside and we sat in on a session and we were visible and present.
Was that the session we were supposed to sit in on?
No, they canceled the one we were supposed to sit in. And so we thought, well, fine, we'll sit. So we were going to sit in on the House side. And they canceled it. So we went into the Senate, and sure enough, security was barring the front, gave us this talk about how we had to act a certain way to go inside. And then, wouldn't you know, we go in and sit down quietly, and so all of a sudden security's lined up on the inside, the same folks who'd been on the outside. So don't tell me they don't target people.
Absolutely. I remember walking in and I didn't have my No Cop City shirt on. And I was looking for you all. Because I thought, oh, maybe they're in the rotunda.
Yeah.
And when I went in, I said, did you see a group of people come in? And the security says, no, but we hear they're coming. They're doing a rally. And so it's, to me, a beautiful thing when the voice of the people is heard.
Yes.
Oftentimes people think their voices don't matter. Mm-hmm. Their votes don't matter. Mm-hmm. Contrary to popular belief, when we come together and make shit happen, shit happens.
Yes.
And for them not to be there when we went to do our thing, spoke volumes to me.
Yep.
Like after that, I was like, I ain't going in, because we already did what we were supposed to do.
Yes.
But I love the fact that we were in unity with our No Cop City, which was a really cool thing that Aki came up with, the whole logo and everything. I thought that was really cool. And I'm almost mad, like now I really can't wear it because there's not going to be a Cop City in Ohio at this point.
At this point. So we won. They pulled it out of the budget. They pulled out the Cop City, that training center, and they pulled out the 18-year-old police pieces out of the conference committee budget, which means that the budget that was passed and went to the governor didn't have anything in there at all. And the governor can only veto at that point, and he couldn't do anything about it. Right. So we won for now. I will say we're monitoring a few situations. One I was just told about over the weekend. Apparently the FBI is potentially partnering with a local police department to build a training center. And so we're going to be doing more digging, and would love for folks, maybe those shirts will come back out. Yeah. I don't want to have to wear it, but man, it's powerful when we do.
Absolutely.
And I would say that the huge difference maker was honestly that the families had already developed a presence in the State House. So when they showed up with demands, people knew who they were. People in power knew who they were. Yeah. Right? So we weren't just a group going in. We were the group going in. Right. And we were backed by 11 different organizations were there, even if they just sent 1 or 2 people. And community matters. Yeah. And so I think it speaks to not only the power of a coalition, but the power of letting the people closest to the pain points lead those spaces.
I say that all the time. It's a difficult space to be in, whether you are that impacted family or you're the support of those families. It's a difficult space to be in. It can be very heavy sometimes. Yes. But the power with those mothers and fathers and family members is amazing to me. Yeah. And I always say, like, what would that look like if nationwide we could bring some amazing people together to fight together? Because no one is doing, to my knowledge, what we do. There are galas, there are rallies, there are marches, there are protests, there's burning stuff, but I've yet to meet a group of families who have come together to do the powerful work that we're doing, to sit at the table, have a seat at the table. That's huge for these families, and be able to share your story and share your wants and your needs. Do you ever see anything where, I don't know, California, or we join forces with another state and show them what's going on in Ohio?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big thing to think about. My opinion is that protest without policy demands is pointless, because it's an outlet of feelings, but if you don't have a demand behind that, or an end game or a purpose, it's an outpouring of pain that will not further that situation.
Facts.
So yes, I would love to share with more folks how we use both sides, the Ohio Families United Against Police Brutality side, which is more about caring for the families and building that community of support, as well as the OFU PAC side, which is, I like to call it's the family's vehicle. So I help get them in the door. I mean, we are intentional about when it's my face on a meeting, if we know that will get us further in our goals, because there are just, unfortunately, a lot of Ohioans more comfortable with whiteness. And I don't mind smiling at them if that gets us a meeting where then we can demand no cop city.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's intentional when we make those choices. And it's from an honest place of wanting to build a community where everyone's kids are safe.
Absolutely.
And so we use that vehicle, the OFU PAC vehicle, to support families and empower them. So I help with things like writing testimony and practicing and buddy system to go together. So if someone wants to speak, they're not alone. And not only that, but we work on things behind the scenes that aren't as public, because for some people, public speaking is just re-traumatizing.
Yeah.
And that's okay. We do other actions and organizing and community events and things, because it's so important that we all do what we can to make sure there are no more kids
Absolutely.
in Ohio who are killed by police.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, a really good question you wanted you to
Go right ahead.
ask. What was the question?
How does another city try and prevent something like I'm starting again? Because I remember in the beginning, it didn't happen at all. It kind of slipped through the cracks. So the question would be for you to ask, how can the cities prevent this even from beginning?
Okay, so was that not one of our questions?
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
That was one of our questions. Okay, so here's one of the questions I want to ask you. So we saw it happen in Georgia.
Yep.
We saw them try to do it here in Ohio.
Yep.
What would you tell, let's say Illinois,
Yeah.
it's when next month that they're looking at bringing a cop city to their state. What would you share with them to help them to do what we've done?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is local politics matter. Those local elections matter. Who is on your city council or your city government and what they're meeting about matters, because that is the easiest place for things to slip through the cracks. And that's what we're hearing about, that potential city here in Ohio. And the only way it came out was residents were complaining about, well, what if there's noise? If this plot of land is rezoned to allow for this training center to be built. So it sounds small, but having people who their role in your organization or your community or what have you is almost like the watchdog for your local government, that is important. And that's something I think we as Ohio families could help with training in other states for folks. Paying attention to buzzwords. So training sounds good to Democrats and Republicans. And I would say that when it comes to police, your party doesn't matter. Like party affiliation,
Right.
whether you're a Dem or Republican or how you identify, it all comes down to money. And the reality is the Friends of Police, the police union, is the biggest gang in America.
Absolutely.
So they will put money behind whatever it is. Now, interestingly enough, Friends of Police here in Ohio did not support our training center. And I learned that should we stop?
Yeah, stop. Pick it back up when loud is leaving.
So I learned that the Friends of Police here in Ohio did not support this law enforcement training center study. And the interesting part is it's because it was about training. So similar to where we were concerned that training could mean military training, they were concerned that training meant more training.
Wow. Okay, so I know we hear about they need more training.
Yes.
And it disturbed me that 40 million, 100 million could be put into this cop city when in fact there is real training
Yes.
that could be used. Share some of that in your opinion or things that we've talked about in our meetings on the trainings that could be used, that should be used, that's not really that popular at this point.
Yeah, so I learned from the families based on the set of facts or circumstances around what happened to their loved one. We are looking at the policies that could be put in place that could have either prevented that, made a difference on their case post, for example. It's kind of a whole spectrum.
Okay.
In terms of the training itself, what I'm learning is that we need more mental health de-escalation training.
Yes.
General de-escalation training, conflict resolution training. Something we learned through our policy table is that most departments in Ohio still shoot at black targets.
Yes.
And if you fire into the white, you fail. And they do that 4 times a year. That's training.
Yes.
And so that seems to me like something anyone should be able to get on board with changing today.
Absolutely. So I'm in the midst of reading this book that was written by a Columbus police officer.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, in the book, she shares about some of the trainings that they have when they come in as cadets. And one of the things that she talked about that the trainer said, when you make a traffic stop, you listen if there's loud music. When you approach them, do they have a baseball cap on backwards? Do you smell the scent of marijuana? If their pants are sagging, you grab them by their pants to yank them out the car. Now, to be clear with me, I've seen that in the black communities a lot. Loud car, bouncing, you got your baseball. So it appears to me that all of that training is based on targeting black people.
Yes.
What a scary thing for our young black men and women who get pulled over, and I know the adrenaline has to rush.
Yes.
I've read countless stories. I just posted today, because today is the anniversary of Alton Sterling. And I watched that video, and it just reminded me of how tragic his death was, because when the police officer accosted him, he already had his gun out and had it to his head and said, "I will shoot you," and then you hear these beats in the head. Those kind of things definitely could use some de-escalation.
Yes.
Some conflict resolution. And I don't know why it's not seen on higher levels how important those things are to preserve lives. I know we can sit and talk about this forever, but one thing I wanted you to mention while we're talking is there's a special election coming up in August. What does that consist of, and what should we be looking at when we're voting?
Yeah, so if you live in Ohio, there is a special election August 8th. And it is the only thing that's going to be on your ballot that day. And it is a proposed constitutional amendment. And if this amendment passed, instead of having a 50+1 majority amend our constitution on future statewide votes, it would have to be 60%. So if you are paying attention, or even just out at the mall, frankly, because there have been signature gatherers there, any of these special issue ballots to amend our constitution where they're getting signatures, if this passes, they have to get those signatures in all 88 counties in Ohio rather than 44. And as someone who's worked on a ballot issue, I can tell you that's so expensive. It would make it impossible to use the constitutional amendment for any kind of police reform or police accountability. And so the power of a constitutional amendment is it's the ability for Ohio voters to hold our legislative and executive branch, so our governor and our state house, in check. You can do other things to try and get them to take up a law, but they don't have to. If it's in our constitution, they don't have a choice. And so some of the things that we're seeing for constitutional amendments are reproductive health, are cannabis legalization, are raising the minimum wage so that people can actually afford to live off of minimum wage jobs here in Ohio. These are only scary if your power is oppressing other people.
Absolutely.
So in my opinion, in August, it's so important to vote no, because we're taking away our own power if we allow that to pass in August. So definitely spread the word and encourage your neighbors and family and friends to at least learn more about it if they hadn't heard about it.
Good stuff. Very good stuff. I wanted to share a couple of things in case anybody wanted to jump on board and help Atlanta with the Cop City. And so one of the things that you might want to do if you're inclined to assist is to reach out to the nationwide executives directly. Timothy C. Frummeyer, and his number is 614-249-8246, and or Benita Clemens, and her number is 614-677-2796. They have a suggested script if you want to send an email, but I highly would suggest that we assist Atlanta in trying to abolish this cop city. They've had numerous black men and women killed in Atlanta at the hands of the police. And if we're talking about military training, which I can't understand for the life of me why, I think it is so necessary, because I said this when I first heard it before I heard about Ohio. If it's in Atlanta, it's coming to a state near you.
Yeah.
And if we don't jump on board right now and help, who knows how soon it's going to come to another state. And if it goes like wildfire, it's going to be hard for us to keep up with trying to help abolish these things in these different states. So nationwide at this point is not on our side. And there's also a list of other businesses that are supporting and or funding. So it's Nationwide, Bank of America, Home Depot, UPS, Delta Airlines, Wells Fargo, Target, Chase Bank, AT&T, and Chick-fil-A, just to name a few. I'm not saying don't support them. I'm just saying know who's supporting the powers to be. It's a scary thing. I'm glad that our work is making a difference in our community and in our state. And I know that we're going to continue to move forward to use the power of the people to bring attention to the issues that are most important. I'm so grateful that we have an Emily Cole on our side who works diligently for those families. You know, that's why we do this work. Without their pain, there would be no work for us to do in this arena. And so I so appreciate what you do. I look forward to doing more work with you. I look forward to us not wearing our Cop City shirts, but maybe another shirt to stand in the State House and let them know that we're not just going to let you do whatever you want to do. We're going to hold you accountable.
Yes. The State House is the people's house.
Yes, it is. Emily, thank you for being in here this evening. I appreciate you taking the time out to share this information. It was so powerful and so necessary.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, this is the EFFIT Hour, and we're out.